What is up, everyone? Boshi here, back at it in Raid Shadow Legends, and we have 3 summoning events that we need to talk about, so let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Alright guys, so like I said, we have 3 summoning events coming up this week, and I'm actually going to go one by one through them all. I'll go ahead and put the details up on the screen as I talk to them, just so we don't get any details mixed up. If I do misspeak or something, the right details will be on the screen. So first off, we do have the regular 2x Void event, but this is actually going to be starting on Thursday, and it's actually going to be running all through the weekend. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that 2x Void event will be happening, which is your chance to get double chance on Voids and Legendaries, so definitely keep that in mind. Next, we actually have a 10 times event, and it's going to be for the Shadowkin faction for Voids. Now, Shadowkin only has 4 Void champions, has 1 Legendary Void, 2 Void Epics, and 1 Void Rare, so those chances are going to go up during this time. And this event's actually only going to be running for 48 hours, but it's also going to start on the same day as the 2x Void, so you're going to have that for Thursday and Friday. And then last event is going to be on Sunday, which is going to be a guaranteed champion event, just like the one we just did for Helior, but it's only going to be for a Void Epic, and that Epic is Ursula the Mourner. Not Ursaga, but Ursula. So we're actually going to go ahead and step through the Shadowkin Champions kits that are going to be involved in the 10 times, and then we'll also step through Ursula the Mourner from the Bannerlords kit as well, and I'll kind of give you my opinion on when you should be summoning, what you should be looking after, and all that great stuff. So let's go ahead and actually go through the 10 times Void champions for the Shadowkin faction. We'll go through their kits. So the very first one is going to be Riho Bone Spear, absolutely ridiculously cool looking champion, and she is going to be a support type champion. So on the A1 we have Absorption, attack one enemy, places a 15% continuous heal buff on the ally with the lowest HP for 1 turn, and then also places the lower version of continuous heal buff on all allies with 30% HP or less for 1 turn. Not the best A1. I do like the fact that you put the high continuous heal on the lowest HP champion, but you know, you don't really want your allies below 30% HP in order to get that 7.5 continuous heal. So that part I don't think is going to be as relevant as the very first part of placing a continuous heal on the lowest HP champion, but it's definitely not like a horrible A1. On the A2, we have Pressure Point, place a stun debuff on a target enemy for 1 turn, as well as HP burn, big decrease defense, big weaken, big decrease attack, and decrease crit rate. You're going to get all these debuffs for 1 ability, which is absolutely crazy. And you can also drop this down to a 4 turn or 3 turn cooldown if you book it. So yeah, she is going to be a single champion bringing all these debuffs, which is huge. Now if you're going into PvP with this, or maybe even just dungeon waves or doom tower waves, you are also going to be able to place that stun debuff. But in my opinion, all the other debuffs are the more important ones, and she just brings so much utility with just this 1 ability, which makes her really amazing. And then you have the A3, Perfect Body, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuff buff on them for 2 turns, and then also heals all allies by 35% of their max HP, and a further 5% for each debuff removed. So you're getting a cleanse, a block debuffs, and a heal on a 3 turn cooldown, if you book it obviously, but pretty much ridiculous, right? So you have a cleanse, heal, block debuffs on 1 ability, you have a decreased defense, HP burn, weaken, decreased attack, decreased crit rate, and a possible stun on the A2, and then you have passive healing pretty much through her A1 when everything else is on cooldown. Absolutely crazy. And then you have the passive Reflect, when receiving any debuffs, instantly transfers them from this champion to the attacker, will not transfer debuffs that cannot be removed, which obviously pretty much means she can't have debuffs. Now I'm not sure if it has the stipulation of her having to be attacked and getting that debuff placed at that point, so things like Dracomorphs or whatnot where it just places the ability, I'm not sure if that will be transferred or if she actually has to be hit, get the debuff, and then transfer it off. So that's something I haven't been able to obviously test or anything like that, or I don't have the knowledge of, but just keep that in mind. And then you have the Aura, increase ally attack and faction crypts by 42%. She's going to be an absolute monster in faction crypts if you get her, but she's honestly an absolute monster anywhere that you get her. So overall, an amazing legendary champion, especially for the Shadowkin faction. Next, we have Oboro, attack-based champion, looks really cool. So on the A1, we have Spreading Chaos. Attack one enemy has a 40 or 50% chance of placing a big decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, and then will attack all enemies instead if the target is under 4 or more debuffs. So overall, I really like this A1 ability just because on the A1, having the big decreased defense is really good, even if it's at only a 50% chance to land, but it also transforms into an AoE ability if that target has more than 4 debuffs, which can come in handy for things like Immortal Dragon or something like that in the Doom Tower. But yeah, overall, really good, solid A1. On the A2, we have Mystic Smoke. Attack one enemy 2 times. The second hit has a 75 or 100% chance of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. Really cool ability to pretty much take debuffs and transfer them over, especially for boss fights. Then you have the first hit also has a 75 or 100% chance, if booked, of stealing all buffs from the target when attacking under a Veil or Perfect Veil. I feel like the first hit criteria and stuff, like having the Veil or Perfect Veil isn't too bad, but stealing buffs typically doesn't come in handy too often. I think the transfer of debuffs to the target is a lot more of a cool ability, but that's just me. On the A3, we have Ninja Arts, places a 30% increased crit rate buff and 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks one enemy. Places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns if this attack is critical. She is an attack based champion, so you're pretty much always going to want to build her to crit 100% of the time, and obviously that always is going to apply the veil, which gets you that extra benefit on the A2. I do like the whole extra crit rate and crit damage placement on her. The big thing with like the increased crit rate, it kind of baits you into wanting to build her at 70% crit rate because you know you're going to get that extra 30% from this buff, but it does only last 2 turns, and this is only going to go down to a 3-turn cooldown. So typically you're going to about have 1 turn that you're not going to have that increased crit rate chance. So you might not always be at 100% crit rate, which is just maybe it's a pet peeve of mine, I don't know, but just keep that in mind. But it's a really cool ability, gives her self protection with the perfect veil from hiding, other than, you know, obviously AoE damage, but she'll take reduced damage because of perfect veil there. And then we have her passive Vanish. Place a revive on death buff on this champion for 3 turns whenever they receive a veil or perfect veil, which is applied from her A3 if you crit, which is really cool just because she's an attack based champion, so she's going to be squishy. So having a revive on death ability is actually going to be really cool. Allows you to build her as a glass cannon and not worry too much about her, even though you're still going to have to worry about her majority of the time. And then you have the aura, increase ally attack in dungeons by 33%, a pretty solid aura. It is only for dungeons, not everything else, so that's kind of a bummer, but overall a really cool aura. Next we have Genbo, the Dishonored. So another attack based champion, but I've also heard he's a ridiculous nuker for the arena, so let's go ahead and go through his kit. So first off, we have Twin Soul Swords. Attack one enemy 2 times, each hit steals an increased attack buff. So if you randomly are going against an Arbiter or maybe Doom Tower waves, you can just steal their increased attack buff. Each hit also has a 30% chance or a 50% chance, if you book it, of stealing 1 random buff. The increased attack buff steal cannot be resisted, so you don't actually need accuracy for that piece. You do need the accuracy for the random buff, but you could pretty much probably build him without accuracy, keeping the A1 in mind, but let's look at the rest of his kit. On the A2, we have Heartless Blitz. Attack all enemies, has a 80 or 100% chance, if you book it, of decreasing the duration of all buffs by 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted on critical hits. So attack based champion, once again, you're going to build 100% crit, so you could definitely take that last line into account. So yeah, no accuracy needed, right? Then you have the A3, places Sword Trance places a 30% increased crit rate buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 3 turns, then grants an extra turn, and you can drop this down to a 4-turn cooldown. So this is a really cool ability just because you are always going to be using the A3 in order to get these buffs up on him before he does his big attack on his A2, which is going to be the AoE ability, which hits like a truck. So in this case, if you're using him strictly for PvP and stuff like that, which is what I would recommend, obviously with faction crypts and stuff coming up, you can use him there as well. But the setup would be increasing or using Sword Trance, get your increased crit rate, get your increased crit damage, have any other buffs on him, you get that extra turn, and then you'll use his A2 just to do ridiculous damage, at which point you can actually build him at 70% crit rate because that's what he's going to be used for as a nuke. You don't need to have it consistently at 100%. Then on the passive, we have Flinty, immune to decreased attack debuffs. Awesome ability, so he's never going to have a decrease in the damage output that he's putting out himself. Obviously, your opponent can have increased defense and stuff like that, but that is what it is. And then we'll ignore unkillable buffs, unkillable buffs when attacking under increased attack buff. So you're going to want to bring something like an Arbiter, a Seeker, a Gorgorab, or something like that to use the increased attack. In order to trigger his passive very frequently. And then you have the aura, increase ally speed in arena battles by 20%, built for the arena. If you really want to put him in place of, in the front aura place, obviously I think he'll do better with things like Arbiter and whatnot with them in that aura spot, but he does have a decent aura for arena. So really, really good in arena. I don't know if I talked about Oboro, like where she'd be good at. I think honestly she can be good anywhere. Obviously faction crypts is going to be a major one, but I think she can be a solid dungeon damage dealer as well. But yeah. And the last one is going to be a rare named Fanatic. So he's going to be a support rare. I'm not sure if anyone really cares about the rare, but we'll talk about him anyway. Devil Hunt on the A1. Attack one enemy has a 30 or a 40% chance if you book it of placing a low decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, and then has a 30 or 40% chance of placing a big decreased defense debuff instead if the target is under 2 or more debuffs. So that's actually pretty cool. Like, you do get the benefit of just getting a low decreased defense, but if you do have more debuffs up, you can get that big decreased defense out there. On the A2, you have Curse Bearer. Attack one enemy has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of transferring 2 random debuffs from this champion to the target on a 3-turn cooldown if booked. It looks like Shadowkin likes to transfer debuffs a lot, or steal buffs, so this is actually a pretty cool one. Not sure how often this would come in handy, to be honest, but a cool ability nonetheless. And then you have Rallying Cry. It places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns and removes 1 random debuff from each ally for a 4-turn cooldown if booked. So this is actually a pretty cool ability. Obviously he's a rare, so if he was an epic or something, he'd probably have 1 more cooldown on this. But the 50% increased attack is always a nice buffer for your attack-based champions, but then you're also getting a mini cleanse, which is actually just a really cool addition to the ability, so I really like that. Overall, not a horrible rare, could be very good for people early on in the game. So that is going to be it for the 10 times champions for the Void event. So like I said, Shadowkin only have 4 Void champions, the 1 rare, the 2 epics, and then the 1 legendary. And then let's go ahead and go over Ursula, which is going to be the guaranteed epic champion on Sunday. So you're going to have to open 15 shards for this, just like how we did with Helior, but that was sacred, so definitely way harder. But yeah, if you're looking for Ursula the Mourner, which honestly she's a pretty good champion, so let's go through her kit real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap everything up. So we have A1 Lance of Penitence. Attack one enemy has a 40 or 55% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%. Turn meter unfortunately has been nerfed, like turn meter reduction with the higher dungeons, so this doesn't come in handy as much, but it's definitely not a bad A1 as it can stall out a enemy for like a 1 turn longer, or maybe you can sneak one of your ally champions in a little bit quicker. So it's definitely not a bad A1. On the A2, we have Wave Waves of Grief attacks all enemies, has a 75 or 100% chance if booked of placing a big decrease attack debuff for 2 turns, and then also places a big increase attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. So this is a really cool ability, and also you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. So pretty much doing an AoE attack, doing a big AoE decrease attack, and then also increasing the attack of all your allies. I really like that ability. I think it's pretty solid. Then on the A3 we have Requiem, revives all dead allies with 75% HP, then fills their turn meters by 50%, also places a big increased defense buff and a big strengthen buff on all allies for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. This is huge, honestly, for faction wars specifically, or faction crypts. Reviving is very, very key in order to finally get your Lydia and 3-star those levels. But yeah, 75% HP is a really big revive. Filling turn meter to 50% is really huge as well, and you're actually getting some type of defense after reviving. There's a lot of revived people that just revive a champion and that's it. This is reviving, giving an increased defense and a strengthen, which reduces the damage by a ridiculous amount, and you're giving them almost a full HP pool. So overall, probably one of the best revives in the game in my opinion, especially since it hits all dead allies. And then you have increased ally speed in Doom Tower battles by 24%. Unfortunately, it is restricted to Doom Tower. I wish it was in all battles. That would make her a great addition to all dungeons and everywhere, but overall not bad. So do I think Ursula is worth it for a guaranteed? I love this champion, right? She is a very solid champion, especially if you're having issues with Bannerlords or just need a reviver in Doom Tower or something like that. The issue I have with the way that they built these events is the fact that this is on Sunday, and the 10 times for Shadowkin are on Thursday and Friday, so it's separated from everything, right? So you might even have a chance at getting her just through a regular 2 times pool. So getting a guaranteed version of her is a little bit rough. I respect the amount of voids, right? They didn't up it to like 150 voids or something like that. It is going to be 15 voids, and it is only for an epic. Like, keep that in mind, right? But if you are like wanting this champion, I mean, honestly, she's a very solid champion for many things. Her A1 can help out in many situations. Her A2, a big decrease attack, is huge for especially the higher dungeons, because they just hit so hard. So I almost think a decrease attack is mandatory, while also buffing your people. And then you have an AoE revive with such defense to keep everyone up. I think that's really solid. So overall, I do think like she is a great champion to go for, especially if you don't have her and you're looking for her. And she's void, so she fits in all types of dungeons and anywhere pretty much in the game. So overall, I don't think it would be a bad thing to go for her, but do keep in mind, in my opinion, because Shadowkin is a recently new faction, I would be pulling on Thursday and Friday because that is during the 10 times for Shadowkin, which means you're gonna have to save save shards until Sunday in order to try to pull that Ursula, which is just, it's hard, right? You want to pull early in the week, or early in the weekend, I should say, and this just makes it harder because they put Ursula on the back end. I wish they would have just combined all of them, did a 2 times with the 10 times along with Ursula mixed in there, but it is what it is. I guess that's just the way they wanted to do the event. But overall, I think this is actually a really cool thing, right? We're not missing out on the regular 2 times. We're getting a chance at getting some really cool Void champions from the Shadowkin, and honestly, it's a pretty solid guaranteed champion if you do not have an Ursula already. So I am actually a very big fan of how they're doing this. I do wish, like I said, they would have mixed the guaranteed champion in early on with the other events, but I can understand why they didn't want to throw them all in one big bundle. But yeah, overall, that is what I want to let you guys know. We have a lot going on, like I said, so definitely keep that in mind. Like always, I always say check the information button during the summoning events just to make sure you know what you're actually pulling on and pulling toward and stuff like that. But yeah, that's all I wanted to let you guys know. Hope you guys liked the video. Hope you guys got some information out of this. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.